What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel Podcast. This is your host, Tom Tona. I'm here with Juliet Accomando, my good friend and marketing coordinator. What's up, Jules?
Hello, welcome back to the Lead Counsel. Why do you laugh every time I say that?
That's the way you say it. You're like,
oh my God.
So, Jules, today's guest is John Fisher, who I'm just in awe of. John is a good friend. He is the CEO of the New York Injury and Malpractice Law Firm. He was one of the first attorneys in New York to brand his law firm in that way. And the actual name of the firm is the New York Injury and Malpractice Law Firm, PC. He originally founded John H. Fisher, PC, which was the original name of the law firm. He's limited his practice to catastrophic injury law for injury victims in New York State. And for the last 23 years, he's been practicing limited to representation of catastrophically injured people. He's got an in-depth understanding of medical malpractice and catastrophic injury cases. Interestingly enough, though, he's also a fantastic entrepreneur in addition to being a fantastic trial lawyer. In the past,
and a fantastic marketer.
Yeah, and in the past, he was selected as the National Marketer of the Year by Great Legal Marketing, Ben Glass's group. And he's been called a master of referral marketing by Ben and Great Legal Marketing. He is also an AV-rated Martin Hubble attorney with a perfect 10 out of 10 ranking on Avvo, which requires peer reviews as well as client reviews. John is also the author of two great books. One, The Power of a System, which is probably one of the first of its kind. It's been around forever. I read it, and he gives away basically all of the systems that he deploys in his law firm. And how he built a multi-million-dollar personal injury law firm. Also, then he went on to write The Law Firm of His Dreams, which goes deeper into policies and systems for a multi-million-dollar personal injury law firm. He's been cited by legal experts on numerous occasions at Trial Magazine and the AAJ and the New York Law Journal. And he speaks frequently on different topics to members of AAJ, the New York State Bar Association, the National Trial Lawyers, PILMA, and a host of different high-level groups across the country. And he's known at this point throughout the country for stuff he's going to talk about in the podcast.
And he just gives away so much value, where I feel like a lot of lawyers keep their cards close to their chest and won't tell everybody what they do and how they do it. But John just gives it all away.
Yeah, and he does that in the podcast, right? He talks about everything that he does, and he literally just gives it away. The last thing is that he's been called the Godfather of Masterminds. You'll have to listen to why and how special that mastermind is that he's created. But I'm excited to get rolling. So without further ado, here's the podcast with John Fisher and with Jules, and I hope that everybody really derives a lot of value out of it. Get your pens and pencils out because John is about to spit some wisdom. All right, so we're here with John Fisher, Juliet, and I couldn't be more excited. John, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate I love your podcast. It is fantastic, and I've really enjoyed it. And I got hooked on it with Craig Goldenfarb's interview. But after that, I just continued listening and learned about your Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so impressed by that, too. What a cool thing that is. I didn't know you're so lethal, but that's really cool. And actually, I kept listening to one after the next. And I thought, wow, what a great podcast this is.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. We put a ton of work into it and largely driven by guys like you and ladies like you that I think one of the things that really sets you apart, and we could just jump right in, is you've mastered marketing by providing value.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what you've done is I've analyzed it, right? I analyze a lot of this stuff. And so we'll jump right in with your marketing system, right? Like you market predominantly to lawyers, right?
Right. So the idea that I had, Tom, a long time ago in Juliet was, we think in catastrophic injury law that our clients are consumers. And in my view, they're not. The reason for that is if you have one client who's catastrophically injured, what's the likelihood that they're going to have another case or a family member will have another case? Practically zero. So why are we marketing to them? But if you had a law firm in Long Island that's, let's say it's 50 lawyers and they're a big prominent firm and they are going to send you case after case after case, just as long as you do a good job, not only on the case, but updating them regularly, then you've got a gold mine of referrals. And so I thought, why on earth am I spending even a penny marketing to consumers when our best cases, the highest value cases, always come from lawyers? And Tom, at a marketing conference, I'll ask attorneys, where do you get your best cases from? About 90% of them will say referrals. And I'll say, okay, great. Where are you getting your best referrals from? Half will say former clients, half will say lawyers. And then I'll say, what is your system? Do you have a documented system for acquiring and nurturing referrals from other lawyers? Not a single hand goes up when I ask that. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're getting 45% of that room is getting their best cases from lawyer referrals, and the rest of them are still getting a good chunk of it, then why on earth don't you have a system for doing that? So where that took us is marketing exclusively to lawyers for referrals. And we do that a number of ways. We do that through books. We do that through speaking engagements. I have 2 books, The Power of a System and The Law Firm of Your Dreams. If I will include my personal email, if anyone emails me, I will send you signed copies of both books as my compliments for listening to the podcast. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. But speaking engagements, I just came from Wyoming about a month ago where I spoke to their people, just hooking up with people from Colorado, Nebraska, all over the place, and just making connections. And you might say, well, what on earth is an attorney in Wyoming going to refer a case to a lawyer in New York State? Well, you'd be surprised. They do all the time. In fact, usually it's not directly from them. They'll be like, John, I never in a million years thought I'd have a case in New York, but I've got my lawyer buddy. He does have one. Would you mind talking to him? Or you'll go on the Maximum Lawyer Facebook group and they'll be like, who's the best Mad Mal lawyer? Tom, Facebook is, or social media, it's just a long-term play. It's about developing relationships, getting your name out there. And then when you have a string of people recommending Tom Tona for a case in New York State, it's like, okay, the floodgates open because you're nurturing and developing those relationships. So books, speaking engagements. We do a monthly print newsletter that I've been doing every month in writing since December of 2010. It is easily the best marketing asset that we have. Lawyers don't do it. They think, oh, that doesn't work. You have to do any form of marketing takes a period of time for you to gain traction. It won't work in 4 months or 6 months. You're wasting your time and money. But if you do it for a year or 2 years, you'll be like, wow, this is me. People are calling me about this. So what we learned from our good friend Craig Goldenfarb, and Tom, I do this. I have a marketing person in Iowa whose sole job is to schedule lunch dates for me with other attorneys, prospective referring attorneys, current referring attorneys. I meet with them. And when I break bread, like what I would say, Tom, if somebody said, I've got no money for a website, I've got no money, books, forget about it. I don't have any of that money. And then I would say, don't worry about it. Do the weekly lunch date with somebody, hire a virtual assistant, get them to book lunch dates. You break bread with a prominent, influential lawyer. And all you have to do at these lunch dates is say, tell me what made you really successful. I'd love to know. And lawyers love talking about themselves. They'll share everything with you. And then what happens at the end of that lunch date, they will say to you, Tom, by the way, I've got 5 cases. I don't really know what to do with them. Would you mind if I referred them to you and you take a look at them? And then what that does is it builds up this referral relationship where over time, they're sending their best cases to you. Now, one little tidbit story I want to share. A couple of years ago, one of the most prominent medical malpractice defense lawyers in New York came into my firm with like a box of a file. And it was a judge's law clerk who had died at a hospital in upstate New York. And it was a really good case. And I said, I'm so flattered that you picked our firm for this case. But can I ask you, why didn't you pick the bigger firms or the firms that I respect, Duffy and Duffy in Long Island, firms like that? Sure. Why didn't you pick these guys? And they're like, well, we thought about it, but we just like you better. And here's the takeaway from that. They didn't pick me. This is the most sophisticated consumer on the market. They didn't pick me because of my skills or ability. They picked me because they like me better than these other attorneys. So forming those relationships is essential to developing a referral-based business. Once I had a lawyer say to me, I don't need friends. I was like, well, if you're in the referral business, you've got to have friends.
Right.
I mean,
and we're all in the referral business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just touched on, literally so many gold things, right? So one, know, like, and trust. You have established yourself masterfully, right? Where when somebody goes on to almost any group right now on Facebook and says, I need to refer a med mal case in New York, there is a string of people, not one, not two, like 10 people that go, John Fisher's the guy to send to. And the crazy part is what you did, you give away these 2 books, which if anybody's listening to this, God, take John up on his offer of the 2 free books. They're massive books. They're several hundred pages deep. But I literally built out my portal systems by basically taking a lot of the stuff that was in your first book, Power of a System, right? But what's beautiful about what you've created with all this evergreen content is I started referring you med mal cases before I ever met you in person.
right.
I knew you had your stuff together. I knew you had systems. I knew you were running it like a business. So I think that, and listen, we're not even at the most impactful thing that you've done, which is a phenomenal marketing tool that brings you nationwide renowned, the masterminds, which we'll get to. I want to cover that next. But I think that for anybody listening to this, John, I do a lot online now, building community, right? I was telling Mark Whitehead in a prior podcast, he was talking about having 4,500 contacts. And I said, look, in 18 months, I built up almost 9,000 contacts on LinkedIn, predominantly attorneys, doing exactly what you're talking about, right? And I think that the systems you're creating feed each other. Everybody gets your newsletter. Everybody sees you online. So many people are now part of the mastermind thing, and it just builds this really powerful network for you. And I think it's, quite honestly, genius. I've looked at everything you're doing, and I think it's like just insanely genius. I really have to give you compliment.
You're very nice, and I appreciate that. But here's the thing. Ultimately, you go to lunch with another attorney, and what they'll say to you is, John, I really don't want to refer this case to you. I just want to pick your mind on the best way of handling it. I give them everything I've got. Here's what I would do, step by step. And at the end of about a 2 or 3 hour lunch, they always will say the same thing is, you know what? Why don't you just handle this case? Right. It's like, that's really cool. And I kind of knew that was coming, but here's the counterintuitive part of this is that most people think transactionally that if they give everything that they know away, that, they want something in return. They want at least 50-50, something in return that's 50% of value of what they're giving. No. Don't do it that way. You want to be completely unique in the marketplace. And the way you do that, you give everything away, 100%. Yeah. Don't ask for anything in return. Give it all away. So what I do with my books, if anyone asks for them, I just mail them. I sign them. I put a little note in them, mail them out. I put them on the mailing list for our monthly print newsletter. They get that for free. Everything is for free. I give them the password to all of our policies and procedures in what's called fisherpedia.com so they can see exactly how we do it. And you know what happens at the end of all of this stuff is those books. Tom, I've been into courts. Actually, I'll share this story. It's Long Island related.
Go ahead.
My wife is a judge. She's now on the appellate division, but she used to be a trial judge. And she had a case for 2 weeks with a Long Island attorney. And at the end of the trial, this attorney, who was a defense attorney, said to my wife, "Oh, I know your husband. Everyone in my law firm, I don't know where he's from in Long Island, but he said, everyone in my firm loves John Fisher, and we're all huge raving fans. And my wife said, well, that's so nice, but how do you know him? He goes, we don't really know him, but his books are mandatory reading in our law firm. We all get his monthly print newsletter, which I just send away for free. And we're just big fans. Now, I don't know that guy. He doesn't know that. And here's a guy who feels like he's my friend, and I don't even know him. Tom, once I was in an airport in Atlanta, Georgia, going to, because I practice in Alabama as well. So
nice.
I'm going to a court conference there, and a woman looks at me from a distance. She's like in her mid-30s. She's with her husband, and they're just looking at me strange. And I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. But slowly they edge their way over to me. And then the woman says to me, John, she says to me, my husband said that I would regret it the rest of my life if I didn't come over and say hello to you. And I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous.
Right.
Who do you think I am? And she goes, you're John Fisher. You wrote The Power of a System. And I'm like, yeah, that is right. So we embraced, we had a hug. And it was really cool because I don't know these people, yet they feel like they have some connection with me that they haven't. And the number one thing, Tom, where people get drawn to the mastermind, part of it is referrals, but about 50% of it is people who've read The Power of a System and they say, I just wanted to meet the person who wrote that book. That's it. And, I have another book that's actually even more comprehensive called The Law Firm of Your Dreams. But the book, it's an asset that you'll have your whole career. And,
100%.
And you say, see people say, well, what would I write a book about? Well, let's say that you're a criminal defense lawyer and you do DWI. Well, write the definitive book on how to handle a DWI case and then give it away. Because every lawyer who gets it, you're going to say, oh, they're just going to copy what I'm doing. No, they're not. They're going to start referring their cases to you because they realize that they don't know how to handle the more complex cases. And Tom, my wife came back from a judicial conference in White Plains, and she said to me, are you aware that the judges in judge school are using The Power of a System as a reference book during
amazing.
the conference? I'm like, no, I had no idea. No one's telling me that. I'll go into court conferences, and on the bookshelf of a judge will be my book, The Power of a System. And I'm like, the defense attorneys see that, and they're like, oh, that kind of sucks for them. But the reality is it gives you credibility, it gives you authority, and then you go around where people will ask you nationally to speak at their events because you are the author of a book. It really makes a difference.
Right. So it's funny because I got my bookshelf behind me.
Yeah.
I've got both of your books on my bookshelf. They're somewhere amid the books, but I've read both of them. I recommend to everybody. And Juliet, I would say to you, we're looking at developing marketing systems. You should be reading that book, right? I also keep a copy in my office. You should be looking at that because I think that what John is... So here's what's interesting to me. I was about to say John is masterful at systems. John is a legit trial attorney. I'm talking 7-figure verdicts repeatedly. He's handling heavy lifting trials. But you describe yourself as an entrepreneur, which I think puts you in very rarefied air because it's very tough to do both.
It is.
It is really tough to do both. And I'll be the first to say, I just hired a managing attorney who also tries cases. And because I have not been able to strike that balance. I have focused so much on the entrepreneurial journey over the last 15 years that if I'm being candid, I have no desire to get into the micro weeds. And you and I talked about that at one of your masterminds, right? About how you almost felt guilty at one point when you talked to all the entrepreneurs who have solely focused on it. But let's not forget you're a trial attorney at heart. Your dad was a trial attorney, if I remember correctly, right? As part of the story.
Yeah.
So I think that the fact that you can do what you do so well is inspirational because there are people that are listening to this that are like, hey, I love trying cases. Well, you don't have to be exclusive an entrepreneur. You can do both. You got to figure out the balance, right? And maybe you surround yourself with different people than I would as the pure entrepreneur, like Craig Goldenfarb, the pure entrepreneur, right? So let's talk about what I think is one of the most unbelievable things you've created as both a top of mind awareness tool, but providing unbelievable value. Your mastermind. What's the name of the mastermind?
Well, it's called the Mastermind Experience. But Tom, you and I actually we're in Atlanta with Craig Goldenfarb, and we were sitting around and there was a dinner. And one of the things that I shared with both of you was, I think it's so cool that Craig, gives us permission to do what we love and to be who we are. So, for example, if you told me today that I am going to live the life of Craig Goldenfarb, that I'm going to look at graphs and charts, but I'll never be in a courtroom again. I'm never going to do another deposition. I won't have client communication. That's the end of it. I don't want that life. That's not for me.
Right. And see, that's the life I want to live, right?
Right.
So we can each do that.
Right.
We can each do that. Yeah.
So the cool thing about Craig, and it's so different, because all of these marketing seminars that we go to, they say scale up, get big, do this. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What if I don't want to scale up or get big?
Right.
What if I want to be small? And what if I want to handle just a few cases so we can focus all of our energy? And Tom, one of the cases I handled almost exactly a year ago, I represented the estate of a deceased judge. And he was a young guy, thought he was having a heart attack. He gets to the hospital. They throw him into a room where he's sitting by himself. They leave him alone for 23 minutes and they find him dead, basically, of a heart attack. This is a 55-year-old guy. And so what we did that was unique, Tom, in this case was I got all of the surveillance video. There were 1,100 surveillance video cameras in the interior of this hospital. I recreated the whole thing. We had 42 hours, and he was only in the hospital for like 45 minutes. But I got him step by step. And the beauty of this, Tom, because I'm not aware of this ever being done before by any lawyer, we were able to recreate everything. The hospital documented a thorough physical examination of this judge. We have video showing his triage assessment. They never laid a hand on this guy. The doctor staring at her cell phone the whole time. No one even cared about him. He was in pain. He was in discomfort. And they said he looked fine. The video showed a totally different story. That's what I love doing. That case went to verdict. And in about 2 hours, a jury returned a verdict for $7.6 million. And you know what?
Wow.
I love that because that's what I love doing. And I love being in the courtroom. And that's what I so much appreciate about our mastermind, the mastermind experience, is it gives us the permission to do what we really love doing. Because if I had to choose between marketing, business development, or practicing law, I'd take the practice of law. That's just me. I really love that. So I think that's cool. And what is really cool is meeting people like you and Craig, who are so far, like from a business perspective, so far beyond your peers that every single day I'm just picking golden nuggets from you and Craig and Seth Price and people like that who are just sharing everything that they know.
Same with Jay Ruane, right? Like he does criminal defense, but that guy's killing it. And then I meet Ryan McKean online and I had him as a guest on the podcast because I think what he's doing is super special, right? So I think that, look, let me take you back to how I found your mastermind, right? I saw a mention of it. Craig was bookending his 7-figure attorney mastermind the day before or the day after. And I've been to like 3 or 4 of yours now. And initially I was skeptical, right? Because I'm used to going to these things and a lot of it's motivational. And then a lot of it is, yours is a different format. You use the hot seat format. And even when I was there, I was like, I'm kind of skeptical about this hot seat stuff, right? You make us do homework, but I'm a big participator. Like I don't just show up the day of and I'm like, I'm just going to wing it. I did my homework. I sent it in. I'm very transparent about my numbers, all of that. So I get paired up with Seth Price in my first mastermind. I went with 2 questions. Seth gave me maybe 3 sentences. And I'm like, holy shit. I literally, within 48 hours to 1 week, solved both of these major initiatives that I couldn't get off my butt about because it works. Whatever it is about the format you deployed, it works, right? So now I was hooked, right? And like, you've been described by several people as like the Godfather of Masterminds. How long's the mastermind been around?
Since 2015. The first one was in Chicago. We've been pretty much everywhere at this point. In fact,
which I love also. I love the traveling aspect of it. It's fun.
Yeah, we've been to Hawaii twice. John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan was with us in Maui. And the reality is most of these people I don't know, like the people we bring in, but Seth Price knows them or someone else knows them. And they'll Seth was like, hey, I'm having cocktails with John Morgan the night before. Should he come to the mastermind? I'm like, yes, please.
Right.
And then John Morgan spent about 2 hours with us, was completely transparent about all the issues with his 800 lawyer law firm. And I was like, the people were there were like, this is like having Michael Jordan show up at your event.
I wish I could have been at that one. I think that was before I met you and found out about the mastermind. But I will tell you, like, Seth is another one of those people that just relentlessly giving of anything. For a guy that runs an 8-figure law firm, I can text him a question. He gets right back to me. I was asking him about a different mastermind, and I'm like the king of masterminds now because I have fallen in love with the consistent leveling up and that you get with, like, I've committed to, I'm going to all your masterminds that I can make, right? Yeah. Because you charge $1,000. The value that you provide is, I'm not even joking. I could probably put a 10x to 100x ROI every time I go to your mastermind, just based on the networking and the issue solving by listening to other people's issues, asking great questions like Bill Umansky, who led the last group I was in, did. He was running our group in your mastermind. The guy was so on with the opening remarks he gave and his poignant questions that I left and I was like, I solved like 3 more major initiatives because of these people. Like, it's amazing the circle you've created, the tribe you've created that you call it.
Yeah, thank you.
So how much has it grown? Like, there was a lot of people at the last mastermind. How much has it grown since you started?
Well, the funny part of this is the original mastermind, which was in Chicago, about half the people who were there are still very active and go to most of our masterminds. So the price point is a key thing here because all of this started in 2013. I was invited to a mastermind of some of the best internet marketers in the world had a mastermind. And so they invited me. I didn't belong there. I absolutely had no idea what I was doing. But I go to this thing in Arizona and I'm sitting there for 3 days just taking it all in from all these different ideas from people in Australia, South Africa, everywhere. And I came home and I was so excited. And I said to my wife, these were the 3 best business days of my life. And she said, how much did this cost? And I said, it doesn't matter. She goes, how much? I said, $10,000. She goes, I can't believe that. We could have gone on vacation.
Right.
So my wife is upset. But, my wife, Tom, she's always kind of been, and our firm bookkeeper, they're always kind of against the mastermind until she went to one. And then my wife, about 2 or 3 years ago, went to her first mastermind. Up to that point, she just thought that I was like goofing off somewhere. And she went to one and she stopped me and she said, you need to keep doing this. This is the best thing that has ever been done. And so it's sort of like that. You go to the mastermind where the way I would put this, Tom, it's sort of like if you own a business and you had Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, and they're there to give you advice on how to run your business. That would be invaluable. You'd be like over the top about that. They're going to, and not only on the day of the event, but after that, they're going to stay in touch with you. They're going to guide you through that. They're going to encourage you, hold you accountable. And every step of the way, you're going to make small incremental improvements in your law firm. Like, Tom, somebody recently posted, I'm a new lawyer. What should I do? What book should I read? What seminar should I go to? I was like, and don't worry about any of that. Just find an elite mastermind and just take it all in. Because that's the best thing that you can do. Atticus is a great start for that. Any mastermind, honestly, where you find, I'm looking for people who are higher level than what we're doing. That's what I'm looking for. Jay Ruane, smartest guy in the room. Jay once said to me, I'm not sure if this mastermind is the right thing for me. And I said, I can answer your question. It is not the right mastermind for you because you're the smartest guy in this room. That's a problem. You don't want to be the smartest guy. You want to ideally be actually the lowest. And where people, you're hearing stuff that you've never heard before. I work in a small community and it's like everybody thinks that they've got all the answers. They don't have any of the answers. These people don't know what they don't know. And so they go around thinking they know things when they don't. And the value that we have is we don't have all the answers. We need to go pick the minds of the brightest people, brightest lawyers, and have them share. And then guys like Seth Price, he calls me weekly. John, how you doing? Just checking in. That's what he always says, just checking in. And I'm always like, I'm doing great because of you. And he's saying, John, we got to get that office opened in the Bronx. You've been talking about it. I need this done. In the next 3 months, you need that office in the Bronx. I was like, I'm on it. And so he's always telling me, and he'll tell me exactly where to put the office. They've got all this geo-grids where they can say, this is a good spot, that's a bad spot. And he said, John, once we get you in that office, we're going to double your revenue. And so like, okay, Seth, I got that. Even if I don't man that office, it doesn't matter. So I just take his advice and Jay Ruane's advice and all these great people. But you know what the best thing, Tom, has been from the mastermind? It isn't what I've learned. I certainly have lost a lot of money on, so it's not that either. It's not that we've made money from this. What it is really watching young attorneys thrive. And Ryan McKean came to our mastermind for the first time in Chicago in 2017. And actually, he heard a presentation by Michael Smith, and he said, that set the course for my law firm right there. And about a year ago or less than that, Ryan and his partner, Andrew, got a $100 million verdict. And he said, that never would have been possible without the mastermind. I needed the business fundamentals in place in order to take a $100 million case, because otherwise I would have just had to refer it to some other attorney. So getting the business fundamentals in place is so essential. And Tom, what I think is lawyers don't really immerse themselves in the business of law, but they have to. We don't have a choice in this. We have to become masters in business. Because I go to all this lawyer stuff and I hear these people and they'll talk like about their deposition or their trial or whatever. I'm like, you don't get to do any of that stuff if you don't master the business. I'll go to trial lawyers college stuff and it's young lawyers talking about courtroom glory and all this other nonsense. And I'm like, forget about that. Learn the basics of business and master it. And if you do, I mean, we don't have a problem here. The problem that we have is not getting cases; it's managing all the cases. You know? So there's too much work coming out.
Well,
honestly.
that's because your marketing system is insanely in depth, insanely effective. But let me touch on something you just said. Here's the ripple effect. This was before I knew you, before I knew Ryan. Ryan went on. I forget where he was being interviewed. He made a statement, and I forget who it was to. He made a statement that he would wager that most law firms across the country were understaffed. That one simple comment on social media made me go back and I was like, oh my God, I need to hire a lot of people. I have unrealistic expectations about what can be managed, right? The ripple effect of your mastermind landed on me before I even found you or attended a mastermind this way. I started following your business model and Ryan. And so my big vision now is not only, it's not revenue driven. It's, I want to do amazing things for these clients and we are taking big verdicts. We're going to pick 3 or 4 cases a year that are so large, we're not willing to budge on our numbers and we're going to take them to verdict. Right. So that's the impact of what you're creating. It's evergreen. You're asleep. I could be reading that. I think I started your Power of a System on a January 1st morning at like 4 a.m. when I got up to write my plan for the next year. So your stuff is amazing. And what you're doing, Seth is doing. And again, that's kind of why I started this podcast, right? How many people have access to 7, 8, and 9-figure attorneys? And Jules and I were talking and we're like, we're learning so much from so many people. Let's get him on the show. Let's get a med mal attorney who took a $7 million verdict. That doesn't happen every day. Let people hear you can do both, but you're saying master the basics of business.
Right.
And the rest you can then free up your time to do. You pick and choose how you want to spend your time once you do that, right?
Well, right, Tom. Like, for example, New York City Mastermind about a year ago, what we had was Andrew Finkelstein of Finkelstein and Partners. Now,
I was there for that one,
There's no better businessman in the country than Andrew. He's a dynamite. And when he comes to our mastermind, he shares everything he knows. This is how I did it. You may disagree with parts of it, but he is an incredible law firm that's throughout New York State. And now I think even going beyond that. And
I think he owns 3 law firms, right? Isn't he the head of 3 law firms?
He does.
Yeah.
Like he buys law firms and just keeps building. And he shares everything he knows. And then like in Chicago, which we have coming up on Friday, September 8th, we have Michael Smith, who in my view is the top strategic planner for lawyers in the country. And Craig Goldenfarb's traction coach will be there. Her name is Sarah Frasca. And so we bring in the best minds in the legal industry that we can. and we immerse in. And one thing, Tom, that we do is we try to keep it very small so we can maximize value. We put everyone into small groups. You're not going to be a spectator in Chicago. You're going to work your ass off there,
right?
Because we're going to put you through a grueling day and try to maximize in one day as much value. But when we go to dinner the night before or the night after, and we're just having conversations, that's where a lot of the best value comes. But I can tell you, I mean, there's no way in the world that we'd have a business right now without these great minds telling us what to do, sharing their wisdom and walking us through it. And I'm so grateful that they've chosen to spend their time with us, and amazing people like you who come and share everything that you know. And it just builds on itself. The momentum builds. And so that is my one piece of advice to any lawyer. Join an elite mastermind. It doesn't have to be ours. It could be any. And it could be Atticus. It could be any number of them. And just learn as much as you can. But what I think what we do differently, Tom, is I decided very much at the beginning, I'm not going to try to monetize this. I'm not going to try to make money off of people. In fact, we lose money every mastermind. And I'm okay with that. Because that way my motives are pure. I'm not in this to try to make money. I mean, we make enough from our business that I don't need to make money from the mastermind. And,
I can attest that you probably, because in addition to the 8-hour day, you do a 5-star dinner almost every time, right? At a restaurant that's above and beyond. And then you don't give away like a little schmata. You give away a Yeti mug that's emblazoned with the mastermind experience that I still carry that thing around all the time, right? As a graduate of that day, let's say.
Right.
So you spare no expense. You don't monetize it at all because I know at $1,000, there's no way you're making money on it.
Right.
You provide tens of thousands of dollars in ROI. People would be nuts not to turn around and attend as many of these as possible. I'm pretty outspoken on LinkedIn and in a podcast where if I thought anything you were doing was not of value, A, I probably wouldn't have had you on. And B, I would say it. I would say it in as polite a way as I can. Like, yeah, I've been to other masterminds. I will tell people that are 20 years in the journey behind us, because I'm 55, or at 55, it's never too late to start, man. I mean, and if they had to pick one mastermind as a launching pad, what I love about yours is you do it 4 times a year, right? Yeah. Craig's, I got to wait 365 days and hope I'm available. Yours 4 times a year.
Right.
And I think that it's nice that it coincides with a quarterly cadence because I come in with my different initiatives that I'm stuck on 4 times a year. And I leave with, it would be great if I fixed one of them. I'm telling you, Jules, I've done 2 or 3 major initiatives each time. And John has an uncanny way of picking out the facilitators for each group. They're all significantly well-established business people. So, I mean, and again, talk about evergreen marketing. I mean, he's known for all of these things. It's not just books. It's not just a newsletter. It's not just a mastermind. It's in a pyramid of really effective marketing that builds upon each other.
And in everything that you do, it's just providing value, providing that value.
People in my firm know your newsletter. Like, how crazy is that? You know? You inspired me. I'm using your people to do my newsletter now.
Oh,
yes,
they're great. They're great.
We're very excited. Yes.
Yeah. So you won't regret it. One little quick story. Maybe 5 years ago, we're in a mastermind. We're actually in a small room. So after the day of the mastermind, a group of us got together and we said, let's just have a small group. It's optional. Let's just talk about some issues. So we're in a room and I get a call from one of my friends who's a lawyer in New York. And he said, I'm having problems with my partner. His partner was like 25 years older than he is. And he goes, I don't know what to do. We're really in a jam. And he wants his kids to take over the business. I don't know what to do. And I said, I have no idea what to do, but I know someone who might. So I go into the next room. Harlan Schillinger is in there. And Harlan is one of the most generous, decent guys and most knowledgeable that I know. And Harlan shows, oh, I know the perfect guy for this, Michael Smith. And so I said, okay, I don't know who he is, but he gave me the number. I connected my friend with Michael Smith. And then maybe 6 months later, I got a call from my lawyer friend. He said, you know what? The law firm, we broke up the partnership, but that Michael Smith was unbelievable. And I could not be more grateful. So it's not necessarily that I knew Michael, but it's the people in the mastermind who have connections.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I know John Morgan, but Seth Price does. And so all of these things one thing begets the next.
Yep.
And what it's led to with our members is people from across the country who start referring work to each other. So it really is easily the best thing that I've ever done in my career. And I'm so grateful to have amazing people. And Tom, we are very careful about screening people for the mastermind because, like, if I see somebody who's just in it, they have ethical problems, or they're just in it for themselves and they don't really give a crap, we politely decline. We don't need people like that. We need people who are just over the top generous in sharing everything that they know. And if we find them, then we embrace them and they come back again and again, people just like you. And then it works. So it really is something that if anyone were interested, we have masterminds coming up in Chicago on September 8th. We have one in West Palm Beach, Florida on January 25th. Then we're going to do one with Craig's 7-figure attorney. I think that's in April or May of next year. And that one will be in Boston. And then we're going to be in Sicily next September. So that is going to be great, actually.
That's crazy.
And we're really looking forward to that.
Like, I'll go to the Sicily one with you and your wife. I'll go. So I think one of the things that you touched on that I want to say is to anybody that's listening to this, you talked about the price point. It's $1,000. And I got to be honest with you. If people are, honestly, if it was my last $1,000, that was going to be a deciding factor of, do I go out for lunches for the next month, or do I sign up for the mastermind and it means putting everything else on hold for my business? I would spend my last $1,000 on you.
Oh, thank you.
So here's the one thing I would say as a caveat. Anybody's listening to this, you're going to get out of it what you put in, and you should want to put in hard work. I get on the hot seat. I think it's 20 minutes long, and then they pepper you with questions and input. I think it's a total of 45 minutes or maybe an hour per person. But I put in a lot of work and thoughtful work for everybody else. I formulate questions. I write them down. I ask for permission to say, look, am I free to speak if somebody's talking about something, but they're moving 10 steps ahead of where they should be thinking? And if they say, well, no, you're not, okay, then I'll couch it a little differently. I tend to be very much like Seth. Seth is so effective, but direct in your face, maybe because he's from New York originally, where Seth pulls me aside at another mastermind that we were at, and he's like, did you switch to this thing yet? And I go, no, not yet. He goes, the next time I see you, I'm going to ask you this question and your answer better be different.
Yeah.
And I did. I did exactly what he said. He's like, dude, you're talking about scaling. You're ready. You're there. And you're still dealing with a software platform that no longer suits your needs or your clients' needs.
Right.
And man, like, I don't get easily, I'm not a sensitive type. So when he does that to me, that's the stuff that gets me moving, right? It's so effective. So really quick too, another ripple effect for you. I didn't know what EOS was at all. I attended your New York City mastermind. I think Michael was there. Michael Smith was there. I think he spoke. And I was at a pain point of, God, we're growing so fast. I need some kind of guidance about what's the next level of infrastructure? What's the next level of guidance? And Michael is, they're a modified version of EOS. I know that they specialize in consulting with law firms. I actually interviewed Sarah, but I went with a formal EOS certified coach. That was my final decision. But because of your mastermind, I discovered EOS. I just heard all of these high-level people talking about EOS. I did my homework. I read Traction. And then I was like, that's what I need. We started January this year with an EOS thing. But this is the ripple effect that happens with you specifically and your mastermind. People drop these pebbles into the water. And if you're plugged in, you're not on your stupid cell phone all day, you're walking out with a lot of value. A lot of value. And I very rarely that I shut my cell phone off, but I do it for your mastermind. And I will tell you, and it's also a two-way street, right? Seth and I specifically, we were talking about two different vendors that he wanted to work with. I said, look, I'm working with this person and this person. He circles back at the dinner we had at the last mastermind. He's like, I started working with this person that you're working with. I interviewed him. Man, he's great. And then same thing on the other vendor, right? So like, even though Seth he's running a monster DC law firm in multiple states and he's broken 8 figures years ago, I will do everything I can to give value in whatever way I can, because I have adopted exactly that mindset. One, it's an abundance mindset,
Yes.
right? We're all in
It
this
is.
together. There is a ton of opportunity out there. I don't have a scarcity mindset, right?
Right.
And I talk to guys like you, guys like Ryan, guys like Seth, and you're just doing such amazing things that I want to be part of that give back circle, right? Like to contribute wherever I can. So you've created a movement that I think I'm not even sure you're aware how big it is or how deep it touches people.
Yeah. Well,
right. I mean,
well, thank you for saying that, Tom. I mean, the bottom line here is when we die, it's going to be like, does it matter what the size of our house is or the car none of that stuff matters. What really matters is the impact that we've had on the lives of other people. And like, I'll say that I run this business. We don't do this. I'm really not that focused on, oh, we got to have this revenue. We got to have this income. I'm more focused on, let's change the lives of severely disabled people. Let's just knock that out of the park. And when I'm walking down the street and I see somebody who has a severe disability and they come up and they give me a hug and say, thank you for all the work that you've done for me. That's it. That's all I need. I don't need anything more than that, because that is the reason I'm doing this. And yes, we have the business. We've got to master the business. But we also, part of mastering the business is so that you can spend your time doing what you love to do. Because you don't want to be a lawyer if you hate going to work. If you hate the tasks that you're doing. Buy Back Your Time is such a great book by Dan Martell. And in that book, he says, keep hiring people not to scale and grow your business, but to buy back your time. Meaning, what are those activities that you're doing right now that you really don't want to do? Buy back your time. Hire somebody to do that work that you don't want to do, so that 80% or 90% of your day is within the unique ability, which means the things that you love doing and you're doing it and it really, you're passionate about it. You love it. And so what I'm doing that right now, Tom, because I love talking to you and Juliet and it's fun. So, but if I was immersed in the day-to-day stuff of case management, one of the great things about the pandemic, I guess one of the side benefits of it was we learned the value of working remotely with people. Our lead litigation paralegal has about 30 years of experience. She is in Knoxville, Tennessee, and she is dynamite. Now, if before the pandemic, there's no way in the world we'd be working with her. She can't work, but we're in a small community in upstate New York. And if we're limited geographically to the people in our region, well, there's not that much talent to choose from. And so if we can expand that nationally, well, then hell, there's no limits to the people, the talent that's out there.
How about internationally, right? So I'm just like you, right? We just hired a settlement negotiator. He's out of Atlanta. He works remote. I have team members in Florida, Pennsylvania, and we have a team in the Philippines.
That's awesome.
And India, right? But again, what I think is so spectacular about what you're doing, and again, I go back to this, is your mindset is so growth oriented. And like, I say this to people because the people that I have on here, they don't need to grind. They don't need to do this stuff anymore. You don't need to keep doing these masterminds. It really is value-based. It really is driven to change the legal world, right? Like, how many attorneys just miserable, just barely hanging on? Like, I follow Marco Brown. He talks about the average attorney making like $75,000 a year. And I listened to a local attorney who killed himself over finances. And if you can change that for people, which you do, that's your legacy. That's your game changer. Like, you're a game changer in this space. You really are.
Well, Tom, thank you. You're really generous. But I can share this with you. I just got back from a week in the Bahamas, and one of the persons who was supposed to go with me was like, you know what? I'm too busy. I've got so much to do. In fact, I've got to get back to my office right now. And all I could think of right there is that person should be in a mastermind, because they have to figure out, it's not a business if you're a slave to your law firm. If your firm is dependent on you, every time, Tom, someone tries upward delegation, where somebody who's working for you, tries to give you work and says, hey, can you do this? What should I do? I say to them, what is the problem? Give me 3 potential solutions and then make a recommendation, because I want them to think through the problem for themselves, make a recommendation and act. So when I was in the Bahamas, one of our paralegals said, oh, they're trying to add terms to a settlement, the defense is, and they've done this and that. And I said, I want you to answer this. And whatever you decide, I'm okay with it. I don't care.
Right.
I want, you're smart, that I want you to solve these issues. I don't want to have to tell you what to do. I want you to tell me what to do, basically. And that's how I feel about it. If we're a slave to our business, then like as I think Steve Jobs once said, Michael Gerber once said, then you've got a lunatic for a boss.
You don't have a business, you have a job, is what Gerber said as well, right? Gerber said in the book, what's the name of the book? E-Myth, the E-Myth. Right. So I think that you're 100% spot on. And I always think of it in terms of legacy with my daughter, right? I have one daughter, she's 13. You think she cares that I'm a great attorney? She don't care. Now, you are doing, when you say you want to do amazing things for disabled people, did you ever meet Ryan's client, Mikey?
Yes, I went to the trial in Hartford, actually.
So Ryan is saying to you, and I want everybody to understand this, Jules, I want you to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan McKean, you heard him. And Jules and I did a podcast with him. You could hear a pin drop, and we did not speak the entire time. And afterwards, we were so emotional, we couldn't really talk about it, right? Because it was so moving. And he's crediting you with that. You not only reached your direct clients, you changed Mikey's life with that $100 million verdict. Not directly, you didn't try the case, but you changed his life because Ryan was in a room. Ryan's life changed the day he was in that room with you and the rest of the tribe. And indirectly, that influenced the outcome for Mikey.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, directly, Ryan said. So think about that for a second. Like if you've accomplished nothing else in your life, here you have a paraplegic who is the salt of the earth person. You changed the trajectory of his law firm where they said, you know what? We're going to try this case. They started out 5 years before and they rang the bell against a horrific company doing horrific things in that moment, right? They may not be a horrific company overall, but what they did was horrific.
Well, exactly, Tom. You just described the reason why we do this is to see other lawyers thrive with their businesses, master the business fundamentals, and then go on, do amazing things because they have the foundation in place to go on and do other things. And if I want to go to the Bahamas or if I want to go to Sicily, which I did in July with my wife, and Craig goes on 12 vacations, I'm very jealous, with his wife this year. That's amazing stuff. But if you don't have the business fundamentals in place, you can't do that.
Can't do it. Yep.
So it's just not going to happen. And if you want to try that $100 million case to verdict, you can't do that if you don't have business fundamentals in place and everything's happening. And like right here in our team, we have a core group of people who are just doing intake and just doing an amazing job with it. And the reality is I couldn't go to the Bahamas unless I knew. And the reality is most of the leads that we get are not good quality cases. They're stuff we're going to decline. But we still have to deal with all this stuff. So we need to master this. So we set up silos and departments where intake people are doing intake. Case management is case management. We outsource medical record retrieval. We outsource lien resolution because we suck at it. We don't want to do lien resolution. That stuff's horrible.
Right.
We don't want to get involved in medical record retrieval. So we hire a group in Providence, Rhode Island that does a great job at it, records on time. And then all the probate work, Tom, that you have in wrongful death cases in New York, we don't do any of that. We have a probate attorney who does all of it for us. So let's not do the work that we hate doing. Let's do the work that we love doing and we're passionate about. And that's and it's an evolution. You continually grow and get better at this. I am still a work in progress. We're getting a little bit better every day, but that's the key, is focusing on the work that you love. So the law becomes something that it's a job that you want to just keep building and never leave. And if you have that job, then you're not going to want to retire when you're 70 or 80. You're going to be like, hell, I'm having way too much fun. And that's really my goal too. I have no goal to retire, Matt. I just want to keep cranking this up, basically.
Right. And you are. And it's amazing to watch and talk to you a couple of times a year at these masterminds. And I think that's what makes you special. I mean, that's why my intake team knows MedMal, we're sending it to John. And because you've established yourself as the catastrophic injury attorney and with a really deep understanding and knowledge about MedMal. So there's a huge comfort level there by all the stuff that you've developed as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing, John. I know we're coming up on an hour. I always ask the following question of every guest, which is, what would you say has been the biggest needle mover in your life, professionally, personally, career-wise, or otherwise?
That's interesting. I think really, Tom, what it starts with, whether it's professional, personal, or anything else, is the concept of the go-giver, giving 100% and asking for nothing return, using that in every relationship in your life, including your marriage, and saying, I'm going to give my spouse the greatest life imaginable. I'm going to try, and I'm not always perfect, but I'm going to try to give her an incredible life and not worry about what I'm getting back from it. So, and I think I can share this with you too. You know, when somebody has struggles with their marriage, I always say, I want you to do this one thing. I want you to buy the groceries tonight, cook your wife a meal. I want you to clean the dishes. And they'll be like, oh, no, I'll do it even better. I'll hire a chef and he'll come cook all this stuff. I'm like, no, don't do any of that. I want you to do it. Because the reality is you want to give. And your spouse, even if the meal sucks, it doesn't matter. Your spouse will appreciate the effort that you're making. And Tom, when I think about my kids, I have 3 kids. My wife and I have 3 kids. And I think, what can I do for them? I can give them my time. That's all I can do. Give them my time. Spend time with them in the Bahamas and other places. Tell them that I care about them. Call them every day. And Tom, streaking. I streak every day. So a streak is a small daily activity that you do that compounded can have an effect. And I had a streak of Google reviews for my law firm. Where I started it, we had 124 Google reviews. Every single day, I asked for at least 1 Google review. And over the course of the streak, which just ended while I was in the Bahamas, we now have 576 Google reviews. And so it's doing a single activity every day, a laughably simple activity, and just watching it compound and grow over time.
And that's from a book called Streaking, I believe?
Yes. Jeff and Jamie Downs were actually part of the Franklin Covey Institute. They gave an appearance at our mastermind once, and I got their book, Streaking, by Jeff and Jamie Downs. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And now I streak in multiple areas. In fact, I've been jogging for at least 1 mile for about 850 consecutive days, and I just crossed the 2,000-mile barrier during this streak. So it's cool.
That's awesome.
You know?
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was laughing because I see you working out in the hotel room with the end table. And I'm like, I can so relate to everything that you do because of, that's one of our core values is discipline, right? Like, I don't always feel like working out, but I always work out, right? Like, so I think that you bring so much to the table, John. I can't thank you enough for everything that you do. I'm really happy that you came on. Tell us how to find you, and we'll put in the show notes all the different websites that you want us to put in there. But tell people how to reach out to you the best way.
Well, the best way is I did include in the chat my personal email. If you send a request for my books, I will mail you signed copies of my books, The Power of a System and The Law Firm of Your Dreams. It is J. Fisher, FISHER, lawyer @gmail.com. We'll get those books out to you the next day. And with my compliments, if you want to chat, just talk. My cell is 518-265-9131. If you want the login credentials for fisherpedia.com, I'm happy to give them. They have all of our firm's policies and procedures. You're welcome to share them, copy them, whatever. If you're interested in the mastermind, it's called mastermindexperience.com. Our next event is in Chicago on Friday, September 8th. It is by application, so we don't just accept anyone. But if you are a driven person, I don't do this by revenue. We don't have revenue criteria. We want good people. That is our criteria. And so if you're interested, call me, let me know, and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the upcoming mastermind, man. I can't wait. And because of you, I ended up signing up for like 5 or 6 different masterminds between now and December, one of them being Ryan McKean's $1 Million Day in Boston. And I'm bringing my 2 attorneys that are going to be trying the cases to that because I'm really interested in leveling that stuff up. Yeah. And it's because of people like you and Ryan and Seth. So thank you.
Well,
John,
thank you. And thank you for this podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity. It is a great podcast, and I listen to all of the episodes. And I look forward to seeing you in Chicago.
Thank you, John. And you have changed the game for so many people. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And you've given so much value on this podcast alone. So the Go-Giver just sums up what I see is your entire personality, especially from what you've just given us on this podcast.
Thank you
so thank
Julia.
you so much.
Appreciate that.